Okay, today we're reacting to Zach D films.
My friend got me this sunglass, so I had a creative idea.
Okay. Okay. Oh, wait, let me read this. Here you go. Okay. Now to play Zach D
In
films.
2018, a woman by the name of Lynn Greenfield came across an article that made her uncomfortable. It was the story of Richard Montanez, the man who invented Flamin' Hot Cheetos. It was a feel-good story, a poor janitor with $1 billion idea, and Lynn Greenfield could hardly believe what she was reading. Richard was a hero, and not just because
They
he
made a movie
invented
on this,
Flamin'
didn't they? Yeah, I watched it. I love that movie.
Hot Cheetos, but because of the inspiration he gave to the millions of people who heard his story. His legacy was a viral sensation, and this made her uncomfortable.
Why?
You see, Lynn Greenfield isn't just some negative person hating on a good story. She's the real inventor of Flaming Hot Cheetos. After this discovery, Lynn Greenfield contacted Frito-Lay to set the record straight. And this started a chain reaction that led us to where we're at today. But before we go any further, you need to be familiar with Richard's side of the story. And let me warn you, it's heartwarming. In the 1980s, Richard Montanez was a janitor at a Frito-Lay plant outside of Los Angeles.
I don't know if it's still on Disney Plus.
Roger Enrico was the CEO at the time, and he sent out a company-wide videotape encouraging employees to take more initiative and to act like they were owners. Now, while most employees just brushed this off as corporate fluff, Richard took it seriously. He was at a local grocery store when he found himself studying the Frito-Lay products on the shelves. He noticed they were all plain and lacking real flavor, and that's when the idea hit him. The time had come to do a chip with some heat, some real spice. He snagged some plain Cheetos from the factory, and he and his wife worked to get the perfect mix of spices until he found the ultimate concoction. Richard had created the first Flamin' Hot Cheeto in his own kitchen. He jumped on the phone and called the CEO, Roger Enrico. Now, the secretary was a bit confused by a janitor calling for a CEO, but surprisingly, she sent his call through. Enrico... The former CEO, Roger Enrico, is a main character in Richard's story. He's the one who... that inspired Richard. He was the CEO who accepted the call from the janitor. He was the one who planned the famous presentation, and he's the one who approved the development of Flamin' Hot Cheetos. In Richard's latest book, he mentions Roger Enrico by name 60 times. So regardless of these other inconsistencies, Richard has the former CEO as his alibi. But there's just one problem. Roger Enrico wasn't the CEO at the time. His career with Frito-Lay started in early 1991, and this was 6 months after Flamin' Hot Cheetos were already developed. Enrico passed away in 2016 without ever mentioning Flamin' Hot Cheetos publicly.
What?
Now, the evidence is clearly stacked against Richard at this point. At the conclusion of the investigation, Frito-Lay came out with this statement. We value Richard's many contributions to our company, especially his insights into Hispanic consumers.
We're 6 minutes in, but I keep pausing it, and then my recording says it's 4 minutes. That's so funny.
But we do not credit the creation of Flamin' Hot Cheetos or any Flamin' Hot products to him. How in the world did Richard Montanez mislead so many people? Well, in order to answer these questions, there's another part of this story that's really important. Do you remember when Richard said he called up the CEO, Roger Enrico, to pitch him his idea? And supposedly the secretary actually sent his call through? Well, that phone call actually happened. This is that secretary. Her name is Patty, and she vividly remembers Richard calling, but she says this happened in 1993, after Flamin' Hot Cheetos were already on the shelves. So if that were the case, if Flamin' Hot Cheetos were already developed, then what was that phone call about? This is where the story gets even more complicated. The LA Times found a newspaper article about Richard from the early 90s. This was while he was still a plant worker. The article said that Richard had developed a new snack that was aimed at the Hispanic market. It goes on to say that he even tested recipes and came up with a marketing strategy. Sounds pretty familiar. Well, the article goes on to tell us the name of the product that Richard developed. Flamin' Hot.
Oh, now I understand. The woman made Flaming Hot Cheetos, but he made Flaming Hot Popcorn. Oh, it makes sense now.
Popcorn. This snack hit shelves in March of 1994 as an extension of Flamin' Hot Cheetos. Richard went on to develop an entire line of products called Sabritas, and this was a big project. So Frito-Lay hired this guy as a consultant. His name is Roberto Socinski, and he remembers Richard. Specifically, and this is important, he recalls Richard designing a marketing strategy with a local network of women hosting Tupperware parties. Now, this was a unique approach, and Roberto, who was hired on specifically for the Sabritas line, remembers it well. Richard talks about the Tupperware parties in his book,
I forgot he
but
made
as you
a book.
might have guessed, he says it was for Flamin' Hot Cheetos. You might
Back to the video.
Richard's story. As far as I can tell, there are 3 possible explanations to this whole mess. The first is that Richard lied. And I would guess this happened over the span of a few years, maybe a decade. Richard slowly started to conflate Flamin' Hot Cheetos with his own true story with these other products. Flamin' Hot Cheetos, Flamin' Hot Popcorn, what's the difference? The second possible explanation is that Richard has memory problems. There's an area of study in psychology called the misinformation effect. And it deals with how easily our memories can be influenced over time. I don't want to speculate too much on this.
Now
but
for
in
the
my
shorts. This one's kind of crazy, not gonna lie.
In 2014, a toddler stuck a chopstick in his nose and somehow pushed it up his nasal passage and 3 inches into his brain. He was immediately
This is
rushed
funny.
to the hospital, where
This is
doctors had to
ridiculous.
surgically remove it while trying not to cause more damage. But the chopstick somehow missed major nerves and arteries and was eventually removed with no long-term damage.
The smile at that
An
entrance.
anteater's tongue is... I can swallow it. When you laugh, these muscles in your diaphragm contract, and this movement rapidly pushes air out of your lungs. At the same time, some people cut this...
Okay.
When you get stitches, a
We've
doctor
all
threads
seen
a
this
needle
before.
through your wound and pulls it tight to close the skin. As the stitches hold the edges together, the wound becomes inflamed as new cells begin to repair the tissue. Afterwards, connective tissues and collagen start to create skin. Then, blood vessels form to nourish these developing tissues, filling in the area. And over a few weeks, the wound will have healed together and the stitches are removed.
When you have a
get
mark.
If you get a splinter, most people just go ahead and pull them out. But sometimes they get lodged so deep into your skin that you can't reach them. If the
Then it
area
hurts.
gets infected, it will start to swell as pus forms under the skin. This creates pressure around the splinter that...
Have you ever noticed how odd the McFlurry spoon is?
Yeah.
Some people think it's supposed to work like a straw, but you only have to try that once to realize it does not work. The true reason for these weird spoons is actually pretty genius. You see, McDonald's didn't want
That's
to
funny.
clean their beaters after every McFlurry, so instead, they also work as the mixer. Have you ever
What?
noticed how odd the
That's
McFlurry
crazy.
Have you ever wondered how this trick is done? It's one of those things where you know he can't actually be making the salt disappear, but it's still confusing to look at. Well, it turns out that the simplest explanation is the right one. Look closely at his hand during this shot. Do you notice how he sort of grabs his thumb here? Well, this is because he's using a prop called a Dofi finger. He holds it in his fist like a cup, fills it up with the salt, gets it onto his other thumb, and then grabs it off his thumb back into the first position. Watch it again and see if you can notice. Have you ever wondered how... If you lose one of your adult teeth, the bone where the tooth once was can start to deteriorate. To prevent further damage, a dentist will fill the cavity with a synthetic material that mimics real bone. Once filled, a metal bracket is secured on top and the incision is closed. After the graft has healed, a large implant post is inserted into the new bone. Then a small metal piece is screwed in and a porcelain
This is the metal teeth thing, right? Yeah.
tooth is secured on top. If you somehow removed all of the blood vessels in your body and tied them together, you might think it would be about this long. But the human body has thousands of these tiny vessels that weave in and out of every body part. And with all of them combined, if you started in New York, your blood vessels would make it all the way to the Grand Canyon. It would go on to reach all the way across the Pacific Ocean, over Japan, Asia, and all of Europe. And not only would it make it all the way back to your starting point, but it would be able to make this trip 2 to 4 times over. If you somehow... Hey, Ellie, can you... When a doctor gives you a shot, they can sometimes accidentally push the needle...
That's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Watch some other videos, too. And also, watch my community post. And watch my new songs, content deleted, and Ghost.